Alan Wake is one of the more beloved video games from my childhood. It had such a deep and engaging storyline that, as a kid, I really had no business being able to understand or follow. The story is about a writer, and this really hit home with me because even to this day, one of my lifelong goals is to write a book. In today's video, I will discuss the plot of Alan Wake, some good and some bad things, and most importantly, how this game affected me. My name is Ben, and today we discuss the greatness and underrated game that is Alan Wake. The thing that stands out most about this game is definitely the plot. The story revolves around a writer, Alan, and as a story that revolves around a writer should, the writing is very good and you could tell there was a ton of thought put into it. The ending is very open-ended and definitely asks way more questions than it gives answers, but that's the kind of ending that I, as a gamer, personally enjoy. There are also many theories online, and I've scoured online for hours trying to figure out which ones I agree with, which ones I disagree with, and just trying to form one of my own. I hope to eventually have a video out that just goes into a ton of the popular theories about the ending of this game. But for now, I want to get into the plot a little bit. In this story, Alan and Alice are going on a vacation to the small Washington town of Bright Falls. This is because Alan has been struggling with writer's block for a few years now, and he just wants to get away from the fame and the fans and just relax. But Alice sees it a different way. She wants Alan to get over his writer's block, and she's trying to help by bringing along a typewriter for him. Now, it's important to note that they are staying on Cauldron Lake, which is essentially just a cabin in the midst of a huge lake. Once Alan shows that she has the typewriter, Alan gets pissed off and pretty much rages. He ends up leaving, and when he's walking out of the cabin, he hears Alice scream. Worried, he runs back up to find that the balcony is broken, and he looks deep into the water and sees a body. Thinking it's Alice, Alan dives right in. This is where the story really gets started, in my opinion, because after this point, Alan wakes up behind the wheel of his crashed car, and he has no recollection of what happened with Alice or anything that happened after he dove into the water. This is what makes this game so good, is just the unknown, and that's hinted on very early in the game about the unknown, and it's very evident throughout. I don't want to go any deeper in, I just wanted to give a little kind of preview of what happens, because this game is so good and you really have to experience it for yourself to enjoy it. Alan Wake has a lot of collectibles, and these collectibles really add to the immersion of the town, as well as they're just kind of little fun things to search for as you play the game. And this really helps the gameplay stay fresh, as I will discuss later. Probably the most important collectible is the manuscript pages, as they have a heavy influence on the story, as well as these pages give you future clues to the events that are going to occur later in the game. Also, it just gives a little bit of background on some of the side characters, which, like a book, is very important and just adds some details that you would not know had you not had it. Also, it gives a little bit of lore of the town and just of the darkness in general. And there are also many other ways you can find out lore throughout the story, the manuscript pages just being one, but there are radio stations and there are little plaques that just give some little tidbits about the town and what's gone on in its history. Another one of the extras is the coffee thermoses. Now, I think there's probably two reasons there could be the thermoses in the game. One reason could just be, and I think this has been written about before, is that the developers just had a lot of late nights and drank a lot of coffee trying to make this game. But I also think it can just play into the lore of kind of a small town. As myself coming from a small town, these little diners and coffee shops are just kind of they always have a place there, so it would make sense if it's just trying to kind of fit in with that small town feel. Probably my favorite little collectible in this game is the live action show called Night Springs that plays on TVs scattered throughout the game. These are based off of the Twilight Zone. If you don't have a Netflix account, I recommend getting a Netflix account just so you can watch a couple episodes so you know what I mean, because it's definitely a very good show and is worth the watch. But Night Springs is just played on TVs that are scattered throughout the levels, And a lot of times you find them just in places you wouldn't expect to find them. In episode 2, in the very beginning, you see probably my favorite episode of Night Springs that is played in the game. And you find it like a dilapidated cabin. Like, it doesn't really even make sense that the TV is there in the first place or that it's working, but it just adds a whole new level of atmosphere to the game. And also, it is placed just so perfectly because really nothing has happened in that episode to really frighten you up to that point, but then it plays, and the episode of Night Springs just sets up the rest of that episode of Alan Wake. And this also, I think, just adds some eeriness to the town in itself. And I really want to make a video, too, about just the town of Bright Falls, because it's kind of a creepy little town, and you could totally picture, like, this TV show Night Springs taking place in Bright Falls. Another comparison I would make between Night Springs compared to something that we might know more about is like little Stephen King short stories. It's pretty much a perfect balance between like a Twilight Zone episode and a Stephen King short story. Alan Wake introduced me to the idea of episodic video games. Before this game, I didn't really even watch any television shows that ran in a linear, like, week-to-week basis. This was before I'd ever, watched Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or any type of drama TV show. So when I saw the end of the first episode and saw, like, the little recap it did and like the cinematic like ending that it had, it really opened up a new door of video games to me. At the time, being young, since it was just new, it really excited me and it made me want to keep playing. That's what really sucked me in, was seeing the final little recap that it had, and then when it starts the next episode, it played a little, previously on Alan Wake. And that really just hit it for me. That was when I knew I wanted to keep playing. Another thing that is really cool is at the end of each episode when they have some licensed music that plays. Obviously, I can't play in this video, but wow. If you don't have a Spotify account, as well as a Netflix account, get a Spotify account because the soundtrack is so good and is worth the listen. Before I go on about the gameplay, I just want to mention that it's not terrible by any means. It's really not bad. It's fun, definitely, and it's unique for sure. It just does get a little repetitive. The cool thing is the light versus darkness is kind of a, overdone trope, but this game does make it a little unique, especially with the use of Alan's flashlight. I thought that was really cool how essentially the darkness is like a shield on the Taken, and you must first break that shield by hitting them with some sort of light source, which is usually a flashlight, but later on can be a flare, or you can power up a generator that will turn on a light that will either just kill them instantly or break the shield that is covering them. And later the game does introduce some new weapons. There's the shotgun, the hunting rifle, like I said, the flashbangs, flare guns. But even as a kid, after I think I was maybe 3 or 4 episodes deep, I realized that I wasn't getting bored, but I wasn't as intrigued as I was by the gameplay itself. The story always intrigued me, but the gameplay itself did get a little old. And I think the thing with the gameplay is that there really is no part that stands above the rest. It's all just the same going through, which is fun to begin with, but does eventually get a little repetitive. And I think what really saves this game, aside from stuff like the collectibles, is the setting. The setting is what does make the gameplay at times feel a little bit fresh, but in actuality, the gameplay is a bit repetitive. Not enough to completely throw my opinion of the game off, but enough to where even as a kid, and where I wasn't really being overly critical of games, I was able to recognize that. Here's a part of the video where I want to get a little more personal and just talk about how these games have impacted my life. So first, I would just have to start off with the day that I got the game. So actually, my brother bought the game, and I remember we were reading a Game Informer or whatever. Back in the day, you get like a year subscription for like $10 or whatever. But and he said that there was this game about a writer, and I was like, a writer? Like, not that I thought it was uncool, but I was like shocked, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, writing is something that I'm passionate about, and I had no idea that the two worlds even really were connected. But now that I'm older, I see they are a little bit more, but this is my first experience with that. So I remember he got the game one weekend, and our high school had a choir trip every like 4 years, and they went to Disney World, so it's his turn to go to Disney World. And he went, he left me with this game, and I was like, okay, like, let's try it. Like, I liked horror games, but I'd never really played any. I just watched him play them. And I put it in, and I played it, and I was pretty much blown away. Like I said, the episodic format, which really was like the sticking point where I knew I was going to continue playing that game. I think we got it on like a Friday, and then I had finished it that Sunday morning, I think. And I remember just having like a sense of accomplishment, because I was still pretty young and I wasn't very good at video games, and this was one of like the first non sports related video game that I had like success in. And I actually kind of thought I was good at video games at this point, but really I'm not. But I remember just playing it, and I didn't want to put it down, and I was so excited to tell him about when he got back, but I couldn't because I didn't want to spoil it and all these things. But it was definitely a really good game, and as a kid I knew it was a good game. One thing that this game did too was help me overcome my fears. As a kid, I didn't really like to play horror games, I just liked to watch them. I definitely knew that I liked it, I just couldn't do it on my own. And this game, looking back, isn't super duper scary, but for a kid at the time, I was definitely a little frightened. I remember doing like the escort missions, or missions where you had, Barry or Sheriff Breaker with you, and I was like really just wanting those missions to happen, because the game does a good job of creating like it makes you feel like you were actually with the characters when they're there. And I remember also when I played this game, I actually played with my TV volume turned really low, because I got kind of frightened and I didn't want like these loud noises to scare me. Now I just play normally, but as a kid I was pretty scared. Another thing that's a little bit even more personal is that I, growing up, was always content with staying in my town. I never thought I'd leave. But as I, got into my 20s, my college years, I really didn't love the idea of staying where I grew up at. And it worked a lot better for me to just stay where I am, because my best employment opportunities were my hometown. But this game, and kind of in hindsight, I would like to retire one day to that Washington Pacific Northwest area. I didn't know at the time, like, this wasn't like a thing where right away I was like, here we go, this is where I want to move. But it was like as I've gotten older and I realized that that's what I like. I like the rainy weather. I love the landscape. Where I'm from, it's pretty flat. But as I grew up, I could probably point to Alan Wake as my first, and really my only sort of introduction to that Pacific Northwest. So it's kind of funny how this game that I played when I was little, and I didn't even really think would have that huge impact on me, is determining where I want to retire to when I eventually do have the opportunity to retire. So guys, this is just how Alan Wake impacted my life, and looking back, it is one of the more influential games that I've played in my lifetime. And it really saddens me that the game is just kind of in limbo right now. The developers want to make another one, but they're just, I don't know if there seems to be a lot of interest. It's just, I don't know. I really hope that they do have a more concise ending, because if you play the game, you'll see that the ending is very open, like I've mentioned before. So guys, if you haven't played this game, I know this is just a little bit of sort of a review, plus just how this game has impacted me, and I hope to do more videos like this in the future. So guys, down below, please like and subscribe, and just comment, let me know kind of what I did bad, what I did good, as this is one of my first YouTube videos. I also want to mention that I will have a lot more Alan Wake themed videos coming out in the future, as well as I do want to expand and do some other ones. I haven't decided if I'm going to do any gameplay, commentaries, or if I'm just going to stick to kind of this format of talking over gameplay I've already recorded.